Welcome back, everyone, to the second edition of the Pocketables Weekly News Roundup. Everyone seemed to like last week's episode, so we're going to keep up with these. And this week is certainly going to be an exciting one. Right off the bat, we've got a couple of things that I'm personally excited about. The more exciting of the two is that we are getting more details on NVIDIA's Ampere architecture, including some confirmation from the supplier that not only is there now a top-shelf RTX 3090, but it will pack 24 gigabytes of GDDR6X memory. So we have a new performance tier being added on the top, and we have a new higher performance class of memory with bandwidth from the leaks that I've seen so far approaching 1 terabit per second of transfer between the GPU and its memory. So that's actually pretty substantial. It's been a long time since NVIDIA added something above the 80 Ti series cards. Those have been king of the roost really probably back at least as early as the 4 series cards. Maybe even earlier than that. No, I think we had a 285 dual GPU card. But coming back on topic, it's been a long time since they added a new tier above the 80s that wasn't just a TI. There's been a little bit of that with the Titan class cards, but those were more of a mixed use workstation prosumer card than an actual just outright gaming card, which I'm sure the 3090 will be. So this is exciting. Hopefully this keeps down the price creep with this generation as well, since there's a new Halo tier. We don't see the higher performance tiers jump up like we did with Turing relative to Pascal. But inflation exists, so launch prices are probably going to be a little bit higher than last time around regardless. Related to that, still in PC hardware, we have hot chips going on this week, including new details on Intel's Ice Lake architecture. This is a bit of mixed news. We'll have an article linked below with more details on Ice Lake. Frankly, I'm happy to see new server chips. I'm always happy to see new CPUs pop up. However, Ice Lake is going to be a relatively limited availability compared to, I shouldn't say availability, limited in application compared to previous generations, since we're going to go immediately to its predecessor, which supposedly PCI Express 5. It's going to basically be a single generation product. Prior to this, we've had at least 2, if not 3 generations of server CPUs sharing the same platform and the same socket. So this is going to be a bit short-lived compared to Intel's prior products. That said, it still looks like it's going to be a very potent CPU for the right applications, and I'm happy to see more details on that. There'll also be some hot chips coverage linked below related to IBM's Power 10. That is above and beyond anything that we would normally consider covering, but it is still worth mentioning. IBM's mainframes are still a workhorse of many agencies, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Coming back to Android hardware, we have something that's been bouncing around for a few years but hasn't shipped on a commercial product yet. And it looks like ZTE is going to be the first to launch a phone with an under-display camera. And this is not what we've seen previously where there's, a teardrop or a hole punch. This is actually a camera under the display itself. I'm looking forward to seeing the implementation on this. There's always been downsides about high-resolution displays interfering with the camera sensor. For a selfie camera that, at least in my application, would rarely be used, I would more than happily accept those trade-offs of having a lower resolution selfie cam. There's a reason I've stuck with my OnePlus 7 Pro, even though since it was a Sprint device, I'm never going to get 5G service on it now, because the pop-out selfie camera to me was the no compromises alternative to notches, teardrops, hole punches, and just a general lack of options otherwise. Unfortunately, to my knowledge, ZTE still isn't allowed to sell devices to end users here in the US, so I don't think we'll be seeing that, which is rather unfortunate. I'm hoping Matt can get some hands-on time with one of those since he is over in the UK, and we'll keep everybody informed if he does get a chance to at least see one in a store. Been a relatively quiet week for the PC software side. No big changes that we've heard announced from Apple or Microsoft on the desktop side, and just the general slow progression of updates from everybody else. Nothing earth-shattering yet. The big thing in the software side of the world right now that I'm keeping an eye on, and I'm actually really disappointed to see, is Facebook has chosen to require a Facebook ID going forward for all Oculus hardware. They've also announced an end date for when people who are using just standard Oculus IDs aren't going to be able to continue to authenticate to their services with that. I believe the date's currently set at 2023. This is very disappointing. This is Facebook just coming for more data. On the surface, it doesn't sound like anything super atypical, since Google requires a Gmail account, or Microsoft may require a Microsoft account for various services, but the distinction here is that it has to be tied to you. Google doesn't have a policy that requires that your Gmail belong to an individual person named John Doe. Microsoft doesn't require that a Hotmail address, which can be used as a valid Microsoft account or an Xbox Live ID, be assigned to John Doe. Facebook does. So that Facebook ID is further tying your services and potentially opening up a new privacy issue, not even just with Facebook, but with end users, since it's tied to your personal information, to anybody using their VR products. I'm hoping that they change their mind. The Oculus hardware is not bad hardware, but a decision like this has the potential to encourage users who were on the fence and potentially more privacy minded lean towards either a Valve Index or the most recent HTC Vive. But I think Facebook may be going for what looks like a sane grab of information, but maybe shooting themselves in the foot here. And as if the Oculus news wasn't bad enough, Facebook is continuing their ever-growing appetite for data. Instagram, a product that they purchased several years ago at this point, they are now changing away from Instagram's direct messaging system to tie it into Facebook Messenger. Once again, just like I said with the Oculus, there's going to be privacy concerns here. Instagram, although definitely more likely to tie the service to an individual, was also used by businesses, was also used by people for things that they don't necessarily want tied to their day-to-day life. Continuing to merge products like that is going to just kill the individual products. What's the point of using Instagram if it's not any different than posting the photos to Facebook? So that's, once again, I think a step in the wrong direction on Facebook's side. I think they're going to lose some of their user base to alternate platforms by making a decision like that. In more encouraging software news, we have Zoom support and Google Hangout support coming to additional devices. Zoom is specifically going to start to see integration with various smart speakers. Zoom specifically is starting to come to various smart displays. That means various Google Assistant displays, various Amazon Echoes, even the Facebook portal are all going to start gaining Zoom functionality for people working from home. I know in the US that's been a huge deal, just integrating normal day-to-day life with your work environment being your house. Hopefully, this eases the burden on some people who may not have a PC with a webcam or a decent headset, but might have a Google Assistant display or Facebook portal that they use to chat with the grandparents or whatever it may be, to give them a new avenue to attempt to communicate during this mess, as it were. But I'm glad to see that. We're also seeing Google Meet support come to the Chromecast. Paul has some experience with that. We'll have a link to his article below. I believe he said that he tested it out, and the way it's currently working is the Chromecast is used as the display on the TV, and then your phone is still used as the webcam and microphone. Depending on the room you're using and depending on what accessories you have to kind of prop your phone up or mount it on a tripod, that may work out fairly well. We will include a link to Paul's article, which I already mentioned. And now that I'm thinking about it, since it does work that way, we'll also have a link to a phone tripod we reviewed a while ago if anyone needs information on that. And to drive home the point, not only do I still use that one that I reviewed, it's still here in my studio. I use that on a fairly regular basis when I'm making other videos, since I can do some 4K 60 video with my phone, and that gives me a third camera angle. A particularly exciting item for me, on not necessarily the technology side for anything we cover, but is the successful reuse of the Spacex booster for a sixth time to launch a new batch of Starlink satellites. We don't cover a whole ton of space-related things. It's a bit far beyond normal coverage, but from my point of view personally, I'm really excited to see that we finally have this reusable launch vehicle and that they've been able to use the same booster, I believe fairing as well, for a sixth time to deploy some satellites. We'll have an article describing some of the history of that in the description below, but just to see this return to space as normalcy is definitely something that is comforting. You know, it's the only thing going right in 2020. So we're very happy to see that. I think that covers everything this week. I want to thank our patrons for helping to support Pocketables and encouraging content like this. I also want to thank, as always, Electrix for providing our opening and closing music. I really do encourage you to check out his YouTube channel. I am going to give an additional shout out to Creative. We actually have one of their K3 Plus devices in for review, and this video wouldn't exist if I didn't have that in for review today. I could not find my USB sound card, so although the unboxing video is not up for it yet, we are actively testing and using the K3 Plus in some of our videos. With that said, if anyone has questions or comments about anything we touched on, if there's something that we kind of grazed over that you want to hear more information in depth about, we'd be more than happy to write an article or do a video about it. Just let us know in the comments below. If there is a news item that we didn't hear about this week, you can always send us those. We check our YouTube comments. We're on Twitter. You can always send them to our emails as well. There's a form on the Pocketables webpage. So please feel free to reach out with anything you see during the week that you want to know more about. That all being said, thank you for watching.